Revenge films.
Carl, who I'd been dating for a year and a half, moved in with me. Since we were working and it was about time to start talking about marriage, I nodded right away and we started living together. His verbal reason was that he wanted to be with me all the time or something. But one day, when I was about to go out, I noticed that my ring Carl had given me for our first Christmas together weren't in its usual place. I asked Carl, who was watching TV in the room, but he curtly replied,
I don't know.
I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find it. I was depressed and wondered if I'd forgotten it somewhere. Carl just looked at me silently as he apologized for losing it. I blame myself for losing it. I've been telling Charlotte, who'd been a good friend of mine since we joined the company, about living with Carl and the loss of my ring as part of our daily conversation. But one day, I heard that Abby, a coworker in the next department, was wearing a ring similar to mine. My ring had some unusual features. I hoped I was mistaken, and together with Charlotte, I approached Abby nervously.
Carl gave it to me,
she said with a smile, so calm and collected. When I asked her what she meant, she told me that he'd give it to her on a date and that they were dating. I told her that Carl and I were dating and the ring looked just like mine, but she was having none of it. I panicked and talked to Carl about it when I got home. Then he said,
If you want a new one, I'll buy it for you.
Carelessly. I told him that I wasn't asking about the ring. I was asking about his relationship with Abby, but he didn't seem to care. The next day, I was still concerned about what Abby said the day before and about the ring, so I went to her again. I insisted I had proof that it was my ring, and she told me he'd given it to her when she went to my house to visit. If this was true, it'd mean he invited Abby into my home. And the thought of them making out in my room made my head spin. Furthermore, when I asked her about the time period, it coincided with the time I lost my ring. I couldn't help but think he was cheating on me, but Abby told me that she was his destiny. I was so angry because he knew how hard I tried to find the ring, and he'd seen how depressed I was. When I got home that day, I questioned Carl again and asked him what Abby had told me. He said,
What? She told you? What a pain in the ass.
What? What's with that attitude? You saw how I was desperately looking for it because you gave it to me, didn't you? You knew that and were cheating on me, right? Unbelievable. When I got mad at him, he said,
You're so annoying. Get out of here.
What? Get out? That's my line. You moved here because you wanted to live with me, right? I'm sure you know this, but this is my house, and if anyone's going to leave, it's you.
Shut up.
Carl got mad in the end and left. I'm an idiot for trying so hard to find the ring for a guy like him. I was so frustrated and sad that I cried when Carl left. When I calmed down and went to work on Monday, I found Carl and Abby openly flirting with each other. Abby in particular was grinning at me as if to say,
I told you I was his destiny.
People who knew we were dating asked me a lot of questions, but I basically ignored them. I felt frustrated because it only happened yesterday, but I couldn't understand their thought anymore, so I tried to stay out of it as much as possible. Things passed like that for a while after that, but a month later, they came up to me while I was working. He was red-faced and Abby was sobbing. He said,
You passed on the STD to me, and now Abby is infected too. Apologize. Give us the money for the treatment.
Of course, I had no idea what he was talking about. I never slept with him without protection, and I'd never been tested for STDs. But Abby said,
This is too much just because you love Carl. What if I can't have a baby?
She cried like a heroine of a tragedy. It was just the worst that they did this to me in the office while I was working. This story went viral, and I was ignored by some people of the company. Just as the rumors were about to die down, I heard good news from a completely different direction. A married boss had contracted the exact same STD as Carl and Abby, which led to the discovery of the affair between the boss and Abby. The rumors about me died, and the story of the love between Carl, Abby, and the boss became the talk of the company. Naturally, Carl didn't keep quiet about it, and the two of them got into a heated argument, and in the end, Abby chose her boss. It had been great if it ended there, but Carl got the ring back from Abby and tried to get back with me. Of course, I ignored him. I don't even know why I was in a relationship with such a guy. I've learned so much in such a short period of time that he's a real prick. And I've not the slightest bit of unresolved feelings for him. As soon as Carl realized that he was blocked by my coworkers and friends and that he couldn't come close to me in the office, he stormed into my room. He caught me on my way home from work and attacked me out of the blue. Naturally, I resisted, but Carl got angry and hit me in the face and body, and almost took off my clothes when my friend Charlotte called the police. Charlotte had promised to have a drink at my place, so she came right after she went home and found Carl committing the crime. She apologized for not being able to help me right then and there, but I cried and said that if no one had come to the house at that point, he definitely would have raped me, and I couldn't thank her enough that nothing happened. He was later given a suspended sentence because it was only an attempt. But my parents heard about this, and they called a lawyer and had various discussions. Of course, they asked for compensation and medical expenses. Carl realized what he'd done and agreed to pay with a pale face. I was hospitalized for a few days to check on my injuries and mind, and was informed about this later. When I went back to work once I was out of the hospital, words had spread and Carl, as well as the boss and Abby, was nowhere to be seen. Apparently, they'd been fired because they were caught having an affair. After being discharged from the hospital, I commuted from my parents' house for some time. But soon after returning to work, I received a call from the police that someone had trespassed in my room. Since Carl was in custody, I initially thought they were thieves. I was even more depressed that my life was miserable, but the culprits were my former boss and Abby. The motive, which I learned much later on, was completely incomprehensible to me. Abby's argument went like this.
I got an STD, got fired, the boss I relied on lost his money, and Carl went back to Emily. It's all Emily's fault. It's her fault because she's the only one who didn't have STDs. I should get her to get STDs too.
Then she'd be free from suffering. She convinced the boss and got in with the duplicate key she made when Carl let her in before. She told the boss,
"Rape Emily and let's all have fun together."
And he came along. She said I'm the only one who wasn't fired, so this wasn't a big deal. If I heard this when I wasn't mentally recovered, I'd have had a stroke. Later, the boss and Abby were also arrested. Abby was charged with subornation or something, so she was guilty of a more serious crime than the boss. When I went back to work after that, I was pitied by many. Well, my boyfriend was taken, and everyone involved, including him, was arrested. I also told my close friends that my house was burglarized, and I was almost attacked twice, although both attempts were unsuccessful. So it was a misfortune after another. But my friends were worried about me and told me to find a great guy for sure next time, so they helped me find various encounters. About a year after the incident, I found myself a new boyfriend, and I'm now living a happy life. I have no idea what happened to those 3 who were arrested, but it seems that they all eventually broke ties and disappeared somewhere. Honestly, they were all such a nuisance.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.